Good day, grade 12 learners of South Africa. Welcome to Mindset. Today, we're going through all sexually transmitted diseases. I know it's a bit yucky, but you have to know this. And you're going to probably learn a lot about what goes on around you as well. These are signs and symptoms we're going to be working through. We're going to be working through twins and where twins come from and why some are identical and why some aren't. So let's start. Right, we're looking at human reproduction. We're looking at the birth process, contraception, and those horrible things called STDs. The birth process. Now, people, the birth process is called parturition. Why? Because the baby literally parts with the mother's body. Now, there are 3 stages in birth. The first stage is labor. And that's when, you know, when you see TV programs and these women are screeching to high heaven about how absolutely petrifyingly painful everything is, and they're pushing and they're screaming. It really isn't that bad, I promise you. Having had 3 kids, I promise you now it isn't bad at all. It's all showmanship. So you go into labor, contractions start. The oxytocin causes the body, the uterus to start contracting, and that starts to push the baby towards the birth canal and out. All right, then you've got expulsion of the body. Now that always makes me think that the baby's like pushed out, shot out. It's not. It just gets slowly pushed out. And then expulsion of the afterbirth. Now remember, the afterbirth is the placenta. All right, now we go on the hormone oxytocin. People, you have to know this. Okay, it's very important, oxytocin, and we've learned about the hormones. It's secreted by the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland and of the mother, and that's what causes those uterine contractions. We have to push the baby out. But also, very importantly, ladies, it causes the dilation of the cervix. Because remember, people, that cervix is a tiny little thing. It's like that size. Now, you've got to get a baby's head that size through the cervix. So it is sore because the bones are pulling apart and the skin and the muscle is stretching, but it's designed to do that. So, you know, it's not the end of the world. Now, when labor begins, the uterus contracts and the amnion bursts. Now remember, what do we have in that amnion? We have the amniotic fluid. And when that amnion bursts, the membrane bursts, the fluid runs out and we say that the water has broken. All right, now we know delivery is on its way, baby's on its way. The uterine contractions force the baby through the pelvic bones and into the birth canal. When the head appears, we say that it is crowning, and everyone gets a little bit of a zest there because you think, yay, it's almost finished, because they say, the head's crowning, you think, phew, thank heavens, it's almost over. Okay, the head comes out first, the baby then turns sideways so that the shoulders can fit through. People, remember, the head is bigger. If we look at the baby's head sideways, the head has, okay, I'm not an artist, please forgive me, but the head is sideways here. So the head comes through the shoulders. If you look at the head like that, the shoulders are much bigger than the head. So the head comes through, the baby has to turn so that it goes out the largest part, because that's what the opening looks like. Remember, you've got the pelvic bones here. There's a pelvic bone there, and there's a pelvic bone there. So the head comes through so that the long side goes this way, so the baby's looking downwards. Then we have to turn the head so that the shoulders can slip through. People, think about climbing through a small window. You're going to go this shoulder first and then that shoulder. All right, that's how the baby comes out. Okay, so the head comes first, then the shoulders. Now, the umbilical cord is clamped, all right, and then it is cut. Now, remember, the umbilical cord connects the mother to the baby to the placenta, and the placenta clearly is attached to the mom. When the mother has more contractions, she expels the placenta, and we call that the afterbirth. Now, animals will very often eat the afterbirth. Why? Because it's pure protein. So it provides a lot of nutrition for the mother who is now going to be feeding her babies. Okay, and even herbivores will eat their afterbirth. Yucky. But anyway, All right, here we have a baby in position. You can see the pelvic bones are over here. They start to open up. So there's the wall of the uterus. And remember, the amnion has now burst and the fluid has come out of the vagina. All right, the cervix. In that cervix, you're going to have like a mucus plug in here. And that mucus plug is to protect the baby. All right, now, here everything, the baby's now being pushed. The uterus is forcing this baby down through the tract. The mucus plug is pushed out completely. The amniotic fluid is released. And the little baby now starts to come down. And it says here the cervix dilates. Dilates means it gets bigger. And the muscles of the uterus start to contract. And that's the start of labor. All right. Here we've got the baby's head. And as the baby's head begins to crown, the baby now will come out. And the baby's forced out through contractions. And remember, this uterus is incredibly strong. And it pushes that baby out. Once the head comes out, you see it's facing downwards. It will turn, and as you turn the head either this way or that way, the shoulders can then slip through. Okay, here a midwife or a doctor assists with the birth process, turns the baby sideways, and those little shoulders can come out. Now, people multiple births. When there is more than one egg released during ovulation and fertilization of both eggs occurs, then we end up with multiple births. Now, the babies look different. They have the same or different sexes, and that's what we call di, means two, zygotic, in other words, two zygotes. That's where the word comes from. Two zygotes, or we call them fraternal twins. Now, what happens there is we have two babies, two fetuses, two eggs, or the eggs, fetus, babies. They share the same uterus, but each fetus has a separate placenta, okay? And they have their own embryonic membrane. And that embryonic membrane ends up protecting the baby. So this is what it looks like. People remember, one ovary will release an egg the 1 month. The next month, the other ovary releases an egg. Okay, so you've sort of got left ovary, right ovary, left ovary, right ovary. Now, if something happens to one of them, clearly only one ovary will be releasing eggs, and people then become infertile quicker. Okay, now, when the left ovary and the right ovary, they reckon it's about every 3 years, releases an egg cell, and fertilization takes place, it's like having two completely separate babies, all right? Completely separate genes, or they could be similar, just like normal brothers or sisters, but they are not identical. 2 eggs, 2 sperm, okay? They have their own placenta, their own embryonic membrane, and there our little babies will grow. And then you end up with dizygotic or fraternal twins. I have dizygotic or fraternal twins. I have a son that's 6'4" and blonde, and I have a daughter that's 5'4" and dark, with a dark skin. So they are completely different because they are completely separate entities. Now, when we look at monozygotic, mono means one. So it's telling you there was one zygote formed, okay? Or we call them maternal twins. This is by genetics, and it normally skips a generation. So when one egg is fertilized, the egg separates into 2 structures, resulting in identical same-sex twins. In other words, they will look the same. They have identical genetic inheritance and appearance, and the placenta may be fused with a common embryonic membrane. Now, in some cases, you will have heard, and also in movies, they put it in movies. Sometimes there's a little bit of truth in movies. You'll find that there'll be a person and they'll start getting really bad headaches, and when they do scans, they'll find there's an eyeball in their brain, and it will have been from the other twin. So in some cases, the one twin, if they are monozygotic or maternal twins, they will actually absorb the other twin if something happens or something goes wrong. Okay. So, but generally they will grow as separate little entities, but in the same structure. Okay. Now, when the one egg Because remember, monozygotic, you've got one egg, you've got one little spermie that swims in there and fertilizes that egg. Okay? Then the egg undergoes mitosis and separates into two separate structures. So this will be twin 1 and that will be twin 2. Sometimes that separation doesn't happen properly. And for some reason, those two little cells stay joined. And when they joined, they form co-joined, and our common word for it is Siamese twins, when the separation of the egg into two is not complete. So the twins are going to stay joined at some point. So here is a diagram or a picture of the one egg and the one sperm. It then divides into two structures, and these two structures are the same sex always, because remember, the sex is determined by the sperm cell. So if that sperm cell is an X sperm cell, or if it is a Y sperm cell, it will determine if these are boys or girls. So they are always the same sex. And here we have identical triplet girls. And I can only think what a handful that was. But here you've got your three little triplet girls, and you can see they look the same. Even though they're wearing different clothes, they've got their hair is different, but those little faces are identical. All right, people, here we're looking at the co-joined twins. Okay, our picture's a little bit squished here. Okay, now these were Siamese twins. They are Chang and Eng Banker, and this is the photo image which we took from Wikipedia. But here they are joined. You can see their little suits. They've clearly got two arms, but they joined here in the middle of their bodies. So they clearly share maybe a liver and stomach and a lung or two, etc. All right, here we have premature babies. Shame. This is, remember, normal development is 40 weeks. And anything, a baby that comes out before 40 weeks is regarded as premature. Now, generally with multiple births, people just think about it. Our uterus, this area here in a woman is small. All right, we're not designed to have 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 babies. We're supposed to only have one at a time. Every now and again, okay, we have a bit of a magic miracle that happens, and we end up with 2 or 3 if you end up with triplets. But multiple births, there isn't a lot of space in here for 2 or 3 or 4 babies to grow comfortably to 40 weeks. So what happens is they are often born premature. Premature means before the time. So the babies require very specialized medical care, and they may be weak and underweight. It depends on how soon they have arrived. Babies are placed in, now please, you've got to know this, an incubator. You also put eggs in incubators. It's like a box, a plastic box that keeps them warm. And here I've got a photo for you. It's like a plastic box, and then the little baby can lie there, and this little one's on a respirator, so clearly the lungs are also very weak. Okay, now we get to contraception. Okay, now people, conception means fertilization has taken place. We've gone through all of this. When the egg cell and the sperm cell fuse to form a diploid zygote, conception has taken place. Now we're going to do contraception. Now if something is contrary, it means it is against. It is being objective. Okay, it's against something. So contraception, it means to stop people from falling pregnant. So it is birth control. Okay, it is contra conceiving, so it is birth control. Some argue that it goes against the laws of nature. All right, especially with religious groups, and we're not going into religious debates here, and please try and avoid them in class as well. Contraception is required to restrict the growth of the human population. They've done this in China, where they've said, listen guys, if you have more than, you're only allowed one child. And if you have more than one child, you pay so much tax that only the rich can afford it. Okay, women are also, with contraception, women are given the opportunity to plan their careers. Okay, now remember, you as a woman, we are supposed to carry babies. Men can't carry babies. We have to do it. But in order to carry that baby, you have to not only carry the baby, but also give birth to the baby and then look after the baby afterwards, which takes 4 to 6 months out of your career every time you have a baby. So with contraception, as women, we can plan our careers and we can say, okay, when I get to this point in my career, I can now happily take off 4 to 6 months to have my baby and look after my baby and get my baby to a point where it is okay, and then I can go back to work and carry on with my career. And sometimes there are issues within companies because sometimes they don't pay accouchement leave, which is leave for while you are pregnant and after you've given birth. It should be 4 to 6 months. But they can also say we're giving it to you on unpaid leave. So these are all things that women need to consider. And you can't just be barefoot pregnant and in the kitchen for the rest of your life. We have careers too. So women are given an opportunity to plan their careers and choose when they want to have a baby. Producing a small planned family, people, will mean better standards of living and also allow us to stabilize our populations. Now, we have different types of birth control. First, we have the natural method, and this is one that the Catholic Church preaches. So it says that you require abstinence. Abstinence means to abstain, to not do anything. In other words, no sexual intercourse at the time when the woman is ovulating. Okay, so natural birth control, you are going to, it's abstinence. Before sex, before marriage is a definite no-no. There is no sexual intercourse before marriage. And when you do, you use the rhythm method. That's a natural method. Now, barrier method. Now, people, natural would be you're not doing anything. You're not using anything. You're not taking anything. You're not getting injections. It's just natural. So you just don't do it. Okay? There is no sexual intercourse for when a woman is ovulating. And there is no sexual intercourse when you are not married and you are not committed to looking after a child. Finished. Okay. Barrier method, there's a barrier. Now, if I have a barrier on a road stops a car from falling off. So you have a barrier, it means to block. Now, barrier prevents conception and it also prevents against sexually transmitted diseases. Okay, why? Because it protects the sex organ. Chemicals, drugs, okay, these include spermicides, which kill the sperm, the pill, and your contraceptive injections. They work just like the pill. They just work on a long-term basis. Okay, then we have surgical methods, which would be sterilization. In other words, they will cut the tubes in the female, so they cut the fallopian tubes, so that if that fallopian tube is cut, the ovaries can make an egg, and the egg just dissolves. It's got nowhere to go. All right? The same with men. They will cut the vas deferens. The vas deferens. They cut it, and the little spermies get made. Everything carries on. Testosterone carries on, and they just get absorbed. All right. Now, I've got a whole bunch of diagrams here, and I've got why it is what it is, what the safety is, and what the issues may be. So there's the good old condom. It's a barrier method. It forms a barrier and also prevents sexually transmitted diseases. So you've got this rubber sheath and it gets unrolled over the penis. It's a 3 to 5% safe problem area depending on whether it is used properly or not. So there is a 10% chance that this condom won't work. But it has to be used properly. And if it's used properly, you cut it down to about 3%. Okay. It may slip off. It may break during intercourse. It must be put on before intercourse takes place. Okay. Then we've got the diaphragm or Dutch cap. And that gets put into the female. So this is for the male. And this is for the female. Okay. It's a flexible rubber dome and it fits over the cervix. So remember, the cervix comes down like that. Then there's the hole going into the uterus, and then this is the vagina down here. So this Dutch cap will fit directly over it like that. And remember, each female will have to have their own Dutch cap made. You go to a gynecologist, they will fit it and they will see, okay, this is the one that fits there, because each of us is different. Okay, and then the female uses this with a spermicide. So spermicide is sprayed all over here, and that will kill the sperm as they come into contact. Right, this is also a 3 to 15% chance. Okay, it can be inserted a few hours before intercourse, and it must be fitted. This is the problem. It must be fitted by a doctor. You can't just between your friends share a Dutch cap, okay, or a diaphragm. You can't. It is yours. It is made for you. Okay, hormonal methods. Well, the pill, we all know how the pill works. It's the most popular form of contraception in the world. It's probably about 85 to 86% that people use the pill. It's easy. Just don't forget to take it. Its effectiveness decreases when a woman's on antibiotics, or she has diarrhea, or she's vomiting. It will decrease the effect of the pill. And you should not take it at 10 o'clock today and 5 o'clock the next day and what. You must take it approximately the same time every day, give or take an hour. Okay, the pill generally contains the two hormones, estrogen and progesterone. And the pill inhibits the secretion. Now, this is how it works. It inhibits the secretion of follicle-stimulating hormone. And that prevents the development of the egg and ovulation. Okay, 1%. Your different pill companies will actually argue that 1% is too high. They'll say it actually comes down to 0.8 and 0.9%. It's very reliable if you look at all the different processes. But people, the side effects are horrendous with the pill. Okay, just have a look here. We've got, ladies, water retention, because it's the girls that take this. Okay, and the girls take this, not the boys. So here we go. Water retention, weight gain, you get plump. Skin pigmentation, although some of the pills help for skin pigmentation, and bad acne. Headaches, strokes. Also, if you smoke and you take the pill, strokes are a possibility. Not recommended for smokers and women over the age of 40. Okay, so just remember this when you get to the age of 40, but until then, the pill is probably the most reliable one. You need to find a pill that is a good dose for your body. Otherwise, you end up with things like severe water retention, lots of grumpiness. You must find a pill that suits you. Again, it's all fiddling with the concentrations of estrogen and progesterone, because that's what's different in each of the pills. Okay, then we look at the mini pill. It always comes in quite a pretty little container. It contains progesterone only, okay, not estrogen, only progesterone. So ovulation does take place, but the thickened cervical mucus prevents the sperm from entering the uterus. So it almost blocks off the entrance of the sperm. It's very reliable, but it's a lower dose of hormones, which is probably a good thing. Effectiveness about 2%, so it's not as effective as the pill. Okay, and sometimes there's breakthrough bleeding between the periods, and also headaches, and water retention is always a thing. This thing's called an IUD. It's called an IUD because it's an inside, uterine, the uterus, device. And that's where the word IUD comes from. You can also call it a coil. And they take this little thing, which is generally made of copper, and they stick it inside the uterus, and it attaches to the wall, and it sits there. Now, you can imagine, this uterus goes to all the effort. Come on, we've done luteinizing and follicle stimulating hormone and estrogen and progesterone and how all these things work. But imagine, there's this beautiful, gorgeous, nice, deep red uterus. It's got this nice, thick endometrium, and now you go and shove this IUD in there. So it says, oi, what's this foreign body doing here? So the body tries to reject this structure out because it doesn't belong there. It's like a splinter in your finger. Okay, so just remember that it doesn't belong there. So it's a device made of copper or stainless steel, which is inserted into the uterine wall by a doctor. So this whole uterus is lost every time because this thing causes issues there. It's a foreign object inside your body. Okay, it's about 3% effective, and it can be inserted and left for too long, and that's when your results go from 0.01 to 3%, is when it's left too long, and there's all kinds of other issues. Side effects, very heavy periods, lots of discomfort, okay, and it may also grow into the uterine wall, and that is a big problem. Natural methods, people. Okay, abstinence, no sexual intercourse. What is the chance there of failure? 0%. If there is no sexual intercourse, the sperm cannot get into the egg cell. Okay, it can't, right? It doesn't happen. So it's very effective. No sexually transmitted diseases, no side effects because there is no intercourse. Rhythm method, this is what we spoke about earlier. You avoid sexual intercourse at the time of ovulation, and it's only about 20% effective because a lot of women don't know their cycles. And if you don't know, you've got to know your cycle exactly. Also remember that the temperature goes up slightly just before ovulation. So it would mean having to sleep with it every morning, get up and take your temperature, etc., etc. But if you are religious and you don't want to use anything that is artificial, and your religion tells you must do something that's natural, then the rhythm method is the way to go. Okay? Periods may be irregular. The Catholic Church accepts this method, and there are no side effects. You have no severe bleeding. You have none of the other issues. Sterilization. Now, here we have tube tying for the woman. They tie the fallopian tubes. Okay. Every now and again, this 1% there and the 1% for a vasectomy, which is what is the vas deferens is cut in the male. Both of these are similar processes. You're cutting the fallopian tubes, you're cutting the vas deferens. You must remember, in nature, the body tries to repair itself. So it's going to say, hold on, this tube's been cut. It's not supposed to be cut. And after a couple of years, it joins. And whoops, whoops, there you have a baby. And you say, but hold on. The husband says, I had a vasectomy. And the woman says, I know. I haven't been messing around. And he says, no. Listen, hon. I had a vasectomy. There's no way you can be pregnant. And when they do genetics and they do DNA testing, etc., the baby belongs to him. And when they check, what happened is the vas deferens grew back together. It just has to happen on one testicle, grows back together, and the little spermies are going backwards and forwards again. So people, with tube tying and with vasectomies, it must be checked regularly. I'd say probably annually. Just to check that those tubes are still intact and that nature hasn't made them fuse again. Otherwise, you get a nasty little surprise or a happy surprise. Termination, you've got the morning after pill. Now remember, this contains anti-progesterone drugs. It must be taken no more than 48 hours after sexual intercourse, and it's only about 20% effective. Okay? Abortion, I'm not going to go into abortion here. You must make sure that you understand what abortion is. It's when a pregnancy is terminated prematurely and deliberately. Okay. It should be qualified medical staff, nothing that is backdoor, backstreet type abortions, and only up to 12 weeks after fertilization. It can only be legally performed after 24 weeks when there are genetic deformities of the baby. In other words, they've done an amniocentesis or something like that. They've checked, they think, okay, this baby is genetically, there's a problem, and you can then, but it's done in hospital circumstances. It's not done on someone's kitchen table. You will die, okay? No backstreet abortions. If you want to abort or you feel you need to abort, As long as it's before 12 weeks, it's legal. You go in to one of the clinics. There are a lot of women's clinics all over South Africa. You go in, it's free. You tell them what the problem is, and they will abort for you. But remember, you must have counseling before you make a decision like that. Get counseling and ensure that you understand what the pros and cons are. All right, now question 1. The table shows the results of a survey of different types of contraceptives used in a particular community. Okay, we've got the pill, we've got the IUD, condoms, injections, and other. So, state a hypothesis for this survey. Now, if we look here, it says the different types of contraceptives in a different community. So, what are we trying to establish here? We have to have a hypothesis. So, we can either say that the pill is the most effective, okay, or the pill is the most commonly used contraceptive in a community. Anything in that line. Pick something here and then focus on it. You can say, well, you can't say other are, so you say the pill. The pill is the most commonly used contraceptive method in this particular community. That's a very nice hypothesis. Now, but remember, a hypothesis is generally a statement. How would you get the information recorded in the table shown here? Well, come on, people. You would design a questionnaire. Questionnaire. You design a questionnaire, you go around and you say, fine, do you use the pill? Do you use condoms? Okay, now clearly men are not going to use the pill, so you're going to end up going to women only, so that you have taken that variable out, because men are going to use condoms and women use condoms and contraceptives. So make sure, the pill. So make sure that you would then design a questionnaire and you would only ask women. Okay. Which of the methods represented in the table can be classified as a chemical method? Now, if we go back, which one here would be a chemical method, people? Or which two would be chemical methods? The pill is chemical. Okay. This is an insertion. Condom is barrier. Injections are going to be chemical, and other, who knows. It gave you an indication here because it said which methods, but the marks are 2. So it was the pill and injections. Which methods represented in the table will prevent the transfer of STDs? Now, people, it's going to be anything that has a barrier in it. Okay? So if we look here, what's going to stop STDs? It's going to be definitely condoms. All right, your condoms. Now, don't be fooled by what they've asked, because other, we don't know what other is. Injections on the pill are not a barrier method. They are not going to stop transfer of sexually transmitted disease, or nor will an IUD. So, which methods? It's only condoms. All right, now, draw a pie graph showing the percentage distribution of the different contraceptive methods and show all your calculations. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just write down here on a piece of paper quickly. We've got the pill is 86, the IUD is 3.1, condom is 6.4, just so I don't have to keep referring back to this. Injections is 2.2, and other is 1.8. Okay, having done that, so we don't have to go backwards and forwards. All right, now remember, before you can do a pie chart, you have to do your calculations. So let's just transfer our numbers here quickly on the side. We said that the pill, I'm just copying what I wrote down, was 86.4%. IUD was 3.1%. Condoms, 6.4%. You must be able to do a pie chart and do the calculations. Very, very important. They are going to ask you to draw pie charts and bar graphs and line graphs in exams. Okay, injections, and then we've got other. and other is going to be 1.8%. Okay, so we don't have to keep going back to our initial table. Right, now we have to do calculations because that's what they're asking you here. They say, draw this pie graph based on the percentage distribution. Now, you can't just draw the percentages because this thing is a round structure. And being a round structure, we must first calculate the amounts. So, okay, people, we're going to calculate because we have to calculate how we're going to divide this pie. So we say, okay, we have 86.4 times, now remember this is 360 degrees, so 360 is equal to, okay, 31104, but we have to divide, because we want percent, at least degrees, by 100 is going to be equal to 311 degrees. Okay, now for the IUD, we do the same. So clear, we say, okay, 3.1%, so 3.1 times 360 equals 1116, divide by 100 equals, that's going to give me about 11 degrees. Okay, calculator again. Condoms, we have 6.4%, okay, times 360 is equal to 2304, and we're going to, divide by 100 is equal to 23, so that's equal to 2304, so we make it 23 degrees. Back to our calculator, cancel, and we say for injections, we've got 2.2%, and we're going to times that by 360 degrees is equal to 792. We're going to divide by 100 is equal to 7.9. That will convert to 8 degrees, and 1.8 times 360 is equal to, divide by 100 is equal to 6.48, which would make it 6.5. Remember, we want 360 degrees all round, so I'm going to make that into 6 degrees. So, because it's still under 0.5. So, okay, now we're going to take our pie chart. You're going to use a protractor and you're going to sort it. I don't have a protractor here and it becomes too complicated, so I'm going to more or less estimate. Now, if we use our normal process, okay, that's 90, okay, so, or this would start at 0, so there with that from there, that's 90 degrees. So I would take it about there. Okay, so if I take 80 degrees of 360, I should have about 310, 311. So this here would be the pill, and the pill would be 86.4%. Alrighty, now here I look at my next biggest was condoms at 23%. So if this is 90 there and I go up, so 23% would be approximately, I'd estimate there, but you mustn't estimate, you have to measure it with your protractor. So this would be condom, and it would be 6.4%. Okay, you could also do a key and put the word key there, okay, and then you would use and you would say, right, this dotted one is going to be the pill, and that's going to be 86.4%. I think it's just easier to do it the way I'm doing it here. Okay, next biggest would be the IUD, which is about 11 degrees. So I would put it about there. So this is IUD, and it's about 11. Oh, sorry, it's 3.1%. 3.1%. Okay, and then we have to divide these two. And looking at this here, that's 8 and 6. Probably have to make this one a little bit bigger. So, but you're going to be measuring it with your protractor. Okay, so that would be there. And our IUD. Make this the IUD. And it was 3.1%. Our condoms are there. And then here, you would divide these into 2. So we'd say, look, 6, what was it? It was 8 and 6, very small difference. So make that one 8 and that one 6. This would be other. And it was 1.8%. And this one here was injections. And the injections are 2.2%. Okay, there is your all your calculations. Now, where do we get our marks? First thing we're going to have to do is look at the type of graph. Did we do the correct type of graph? They asked for a pie graph. Did we give a pie graph? Yes, a pie graph was given. Okay, did we do the calculations here? They're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, there are. So we did 5 calculations. 3, 4, 5 calculations are done. Then, title of the graph, I haven't put in, but you're going to put the title of the graph, and the title of the graph here would be a survey of different types of contraceptions. So, survey of different types of contraceptions, okay, or different types of contraceptions. So that would give another mark, okay. Then the correct proportions. Have we drawn them in correct proportions? Yes, I haven't, but you will when you use a protractor. So that will give you for each slice, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 slices, gives you another 5 marks. Okay, have you labeled each of the slices? Yes, you have. That's another tick. And are the percentages on the graph? Yes, they are. And there you go. And people, that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And the survey is your 16 marks. Okay, best 16, easiest 16 marks you will ever get. Okay, sexually transmitted diseases. I think we're going to leave the pink. The pink's pretty. So, we call them STDs. That doesn't mean a standard. It's STDs as in sexually transmitted diseases. They're transferred by sexual contact. Okay? They are very common and widely spread, and the incidence of STDs has doubled, people, since 2002. So in the last 8 to 9 years, it's doubled. So it's almost like a geometric growth rate. All right. Communities blame prostitution for the spread of STDs, and the latest findings point to acceptance of sexual promiscuity and the apparent moral decline of societies. Now, there's a nice classroom debate for you to discuss whether society has lost its moral standards. We see things on TV all the time, and it's sort of acceptable. That's the way to do things. Okay, STDs are caused by viruses and bacteria. Now remember, if it's viral, your body can sort it out unless it's HIV. But if it's bacterial, you must have an antibiotic. Okay, otherwise that bacterial infection will stay there forever. In some cases, symptoms are not immediate, so a person becomes a carrier without actually knowing it. And only way to prevent STDs is by abstinence, the use of condoms, and the improvement of our moral standards. Okay, common sexually transmitted diseases. Now we have a couple that you must know. And what I suspect you're going to get in an exam is they're going to give you some kind of graph to draw. Or like, for example, the pie chart that we've just done, they'll ask you to do something like that on different STDs. You have to know the basics. I'm not saying go and do a doctorate in HIV, AIDS, or gonorrhea, or syphilis, but make sure that you understand the difference between them and how they affect the body, so what the symptoms are, okay, and how it can be sorted out. Okay, HIV, AIDS. First of all, it's the killer of the 20th century. You've had AIDS ad nauseum since you were very little because of the HIV awareness campaign. Okay, it's caused by a retrovirus called the human immunodeficiency virus, and that's where HIV comes from. So when we talk about the HIV virus, we're actually incorrect. It's the HI virus because the V in HIV stands for virus. And I get very agitated when people talk about HIV virus, HIV. Well, it's like saying HI virus, HI virus, virus. So people just make sure of the way you use it. So HIV, and that causes, now please look at this. You've got the retrovirus that causes HIV. Okay, called HIV. And HIV causes AIDS. So your acquired immune deficiency syndrome, and the fact that it's a syndrome means that the symptoms for one person will be completely different to the symptoms of another person. They have the same disease, but your symptoms are different. Why? Because the HIV virus attacks your immune system, and each of us has a different immune system. We're made up of different proteins. So what happens is you may have, or one person may have a weaker muscular system. Another person may have weaker lungs. So this person may end up with lung cancer or symptoms similar to lung cancer, and this one with muscular dystrophy. It depends on the person. So it is a syndrome, not a disease. A disease, if you get flu and I get flu, we are both miserable. We both feel like a train has run us over. Our nose is run, our eyes are sore, our head is sore, everything aches and hurts. Okay, we have the same symptoms. But in a syndrome, it means that we all have different symptoms or would have different symptoms. Okay, AIDS is AIDS in the final stage of HIV infection. So AIDS is when your immune system is now goodbye. The virus is transmitted in body fluids like sperm, breast milk, vaginal fluids, and blood. Okay, the blood and the vaginal fluids and the sperm all relate to sexual contact. Okay, people, for that reason, a mother who is HIV positive is told not to breastfeed. She may not breastfeed. Why? The HIV virus is in her milk. So she's got to use powdered milk, okay? And the clinics will give powdered milk for free to mothers who are HIV positive. All right, so the babies will never ever be breastfed because that milk is bad. It's not good milk. All right, HIV is transferred from the infected mother to an unborn child. So if it's not done once the baby's been born, it is done here in breast milk, which is no-no. And here, it is automatically transferred. Why? Because of the placenta. And the placenta cannot block HIV. Remember, the placenta also can't block German measles. So that's a problem. But when the mother is pregnant, she ends up having antiretroviral drugs, and that will help prevent the baby from becoming infected. HIV is not transferred, people, by touching, kissing, shaking hands, tears, sneezing, coughing, mosquito bites. It is not transferred that way. I put a diagram here, quite a pretty picture, taken from Wikipedia, about what the HIV virus looks like. You know, they say, know thine enemy. I mean, if you look at this, they look like little daffodils all around. This is a very, very pretty structure. But respect it, okay? So you've got your docking glycoproteins, you've got this membrane that forms all the way around it, and it's a lipid membrane, and in here we have our RNA in the capsid. All right, very pretty, very dangerous. Okay, causes. The virus attacks the lymphocytes, which weakens the immune system and reduces the body's resistance to illness. Okay, people, you know all of this. The infected person has no resistance to any diseases that may attack the body, and they contract illnesses like flu and TB and diarrhea, cancers, pneumonia. Why? The immune system's not working. So any bug that's out there is going to cause the person to become very ill and can cause death. So it's not the HIV that kills the person. It's everything else because your immune system can't defend you. Symptoms, it has no symptoms for up to 10 years. Okay, in most cases. So the time span of the infection to the symptoms depends on the various factors. So you're looking at your genetic makeup, the level of your immune function to start off with, and the physical health at the time of the infection. But what they're also not bringing into account here is your diet. If you are healthy and you're eating well, then that's fine. And if you're taking antiretrovirals with a healthy diet and you're exercising and you're trying to live a healthy life, cool, you'll be okay and you'll live much longer. The problem is that a lot of the people who have contracted HIV, their staple food is maize meal. So they're not getting a whole variety of vitamins and minerals to help their immune system. And if you're taking the antiretrovirals and you're not eating healthily, well, they're not really going to work. Okay. For several weeks after the initial infection, there are no signs. People remember there's a window period, and that's the problem. If you have prostitutes and they go and get tested every week, well, that's great. They're being tested every week. But maybe the person that they had sexual intercourse with the night before, they've got a 2-month window period, and they are infected. So the tests will show negative. It takes up to 6 months for the tests to show positive in spite of HIV being present. So people, when HIV positive people show symptoms, it means that the disease has progressed to AIDS. You can't see the symptoms when it is HIV. Okay, the most common symptoms are severe weight of loss. Now this is when the people get AIDS. So here we go with AIDS. It's not when they are infected with HIV. It's when it now progresses to the AIDS stage. Diarrhea, fever, skin cancer develops, swollen spots spread all over the body, organs swell, especially the lymph nodes, because remember their job is to clean things out. Secondary illnesses and infections. Why? Because remember, your bronchitis bacteria, for example, is an opportunistic bacteria. So when the body system is down and the virus has now made you tired and sick and run your body down, the little bronchitis bug gets there and says, what can I do here? And he just like settles in. He's opportunistic. All right. So all those opportunistic kind of secondary illnesses, they set in and they cause severe symptoms. Now remember, AIDS is often confused with malnutrition, skin cancer, TB, a bad cold, there should be a gap here, or flu and blood cancer. Right, people, treatment. At present, there's a drug called AZT, and it's used to block the HIV replication in early stages. Now, only in the early stages. AZT also works to block the action and reverse transcriptase, the enzyme needed for the retrovirus for incorporation into the DNA. So pregnant mothers are given the AZT while they are pregnant and also after birth. And it's to protect the babies. Now, treatment in later stages is restricted to secondary illnesses, and we've got a space there. Secondary illness infections. That there is no, please look at this, no known cure for HIV. People who've contracted the disease are afraid, they're scared, and you must also look after your health, but I'll get to that other point just now. So when you're in contact with people who are HIV positive and you don't know, so it means if you're doing any kind of first aid, you do not touch people with your hands and blood, okay, or their fluids. You don't. You make sure you're wearing rubber gloves. You don't know. And that's the sad thing, is if someone's got HIV, they keep it a secret. They don't tell anybody because they're scared of people treating them horribly, okay? But if a friend said to you, I have cancer, everyone rallies around those people to help them. So it's actually very sad that us as human beings treat people, or some people treat people with HIV very differently from what they would if somebody had cancer that they knew and how they would treat them. People, it's a horrible disease. And those people need our support. People that are infected need our support more than anyone else does. In fact, anyone who's ill, if they're your friends, you look after them. Okay, irrespective of what that illness is. Just around HIV people, make sure that you keep wounds and that wounds and cuts are covered. Don't share needles, toothbrushes, razors, blades with infected people. Always use rubber gloves when cleaning sores, wounds, vomit, feces, or blood on an infected person. And if you do that, you're fine. Promise you now, you'll be okay. All right, prevention, education. That's it. Education. Try to go with monogamy. In other words, one sexual partner and not multiple sex partners. People are advised to practice safe sex. Why? Use your condoms. They prevent STDs, and HIV is one of them. Condoms are being made readily available at hospitals, clinics, places of work, and most public toilets. People, they're free. Sterile hypodermic needles are also distributed free of charge to drug addicts. Now, I mean, some people turn around and say, hang on, they're drug addicts. Why are you giving them syringes and needles? Why? They don't deserve it. Yes, they do. The fact that they have an addiction and they have a problem, okay, is an issue, right? But it doesn't mean that they should now contract something like HIV as punishment because they're drug addicts. Lots of people turn to drugs. Why? Because of all kinds of reasons. Don't sit in judgment of people. Remember, it's like the pot calling the kettle black, and never ever turn around and say, I judge you. It's wrong. You can't judge people. You must support them. And if they're messing up, try to help them so that they don't and they stop messing up. Okay. Gonorrhea. This is our second one, and it is a horrible one. Gonorrhea. This is the most common of the STDs, as there are many strains, people, of bacteria that cause this horrible disease called gonorrhea. And this is look at the word. Even the word it sticks in your mouth, a gonorrhea. It's like, bleh. It is, it's terrible. So, and it's the most common. So, a person may develop immunity to one strain, but be affected by another. Infected pregnant women may give birth to babies with eye diseases, which leads to permanent blindness because of a silly sexually transmitted disease. Okay, cause. Gonorrhea is caused by a bacterium, and it's Neisseria gonorrhoeae. Okay, infection results from direct, look at this, direct sexual contact. It's rarely transmitted by indirect contact with toilet seats or towels, etc. Okay, symptoms. This is a revolting one. 7 to 20 days after exposure, the bacteria produce an antigen called exotoxin. And this causes redness and swelling of the genitalia. Okay, because remember, it's at the genitalia. That's where the bacteria are going to be working. So it's an antigen, and it's called exotoxin, and it causes the redness and swelling and inflammation right now. Males. Infection begins in the urethra. Gentlemen, remember the urethra is the common pipe, okay, from the bladder and also the vas deferens, where the sperm come out through there and the urine comes out through there, okay? And you start with frequent urination, severe burning sensation, a discharge of mucus. We should not be, as human beings, discharging anything out of our genitalia, okay? So, except for females, when they bleed for the period of 4 to 5 days when they have their periods, there should be no discharge from any genitalia. So guys and girls, any kind of discharge is not right. It should be an indication, whoa, I need to get to a doctor, okay? Or a clinic. Go to a doctor, go to a clinic. Maybe even take a sample of the mucus or the discharge that you have and let them send it off and test it. Okay, you don't want to sit with testicular cancer or ovarian or uterine or cervical cancer because you're a little embarrassed. There should be no liquids or fluids coming out of there other than urine, okay, and in males, urine and sperm. All right, infection spreads to the prostate gland. Guys, prostate cancer is a horrible, nasty, nasty, nasty disease. Your seminal vesicles, the epididymis, abscesses develop which may lead to sterility. Now, if it only leads to sterility, well, it's okay. But when it leads to cancer and you end up dying a very painful death, it's not worth it. Okay, females, there are no immediate symptoms. The infection spreads to the uterus and the fallopian tubes, leaving dense scar tissue, which results in sterility. If untreated, it spreads to other organs, affecting the heart valves, the joints, and also meninges of the brain. We don't want to mess with the meninges of the brain. In fact, we don't want to mess with our bodies. Treatment, antibiotic called penicillin and tetracycline, spermatomycin. Sure. Okay. So if you're allergic to penicillin, you use the tetraclysine. And if you aren't, well, then it's just a big, nice, fat needle of penicillin. Now I've got syphilis here, and syphilis is our third STD we're looking at. Now, syphilis causes the death. People, look at this. The death of 5 to 10% of infected people if untreated. I mean, dying of an STD, please, man. You know, any kind of discharge, you go to a doctor or a clinic. Okay, here we go. Pregnant woman transmits syphilis to the unborn baby through the placenta, and it's called prenatal, means before birth, syphilis. About 50% of the infected babies die shortly before or after birth. So if it's shortly before, you're giving birth to a dead baby, and if it's shortly after, you've spent all that time pushing, and out comes this little thing, and then it ends up being dead. Causes, we're looking at a bacteria called Tetraponema pallidums. It actually sounds like quite a nice word. But your Tetranema pallidums is transferred during direct sexual contact. It generally enters the body through a break in the skin or the mucous membrane. Now, ladies, in the vaginal wall, you are going to find little places where the skin is thin or the skin is thicker or there's a little cut or something. Gentlemen, on the penile tissue, you are going to find that the skin is not always perfect. If, for example, you've worn something that's rubbed a little bit, or you've played a game of soccer and it's rubbed a little bit, it's going to be a little bit sensitive. Not a problem. However, if you then have sexual intercourse with an infected female, we have a problem, because that little place that's got the little break in the skin says, here's a pathway for me, and in the bacteria goes. And it's really, honestly, not worth it. Use condoms. Okay. Within 24 hours, it invades. Now look how quickly this works. Within 24 hours, it invades the lymph and circulatory system and spreads throughout the body. Within 24 hours. Now, what I've done here is I've actually put a photo on here, so that the boys can look at this and they can say, I want that reaction from you. That, here we go. This here is a penis. All right? And look at these sores. And it's all festering and blistery and pussy and watery and wet. And this could have been sorted out with one good, nice, thick needle of penicillin. This is what you're going to end up with if you mess around and you are promiscuous. Symptoms, there are 4 stages. Now look at these 4 stages of syphilis. Okay? You've got the primary stage. That's the first one. 3 weeks after infection with a primary canker, which is a sore. All right, a small painless little ulcer on the genitals. So that's what the canker is. Okay, as this canker is very infectious, and need a space there, any sexual contact leads to infection with a sexual partner. The canker heals quickly. So you guys are probably going to think, oh, you know what, put a bit of Zambuck on it and we'll sort it out. No, because that little canker is full of millions of little bacteria saying, let me out of here, let me out of here. Okay? So people, that's the start of it. Okay? Little sore heals. Oh, I've got a sore little bit of whatever on there, sorted. Okay. Now, everything goes quiet. And it says, okay. Second stage, or secondary stage, 2 months after infection with the flu-like symptoms and a mild rash. Okay. In some cases, the lesions develop in the mucous membrane of the mouth and the genitals. So, I've got a couple of sores in my mouth. I wonder what that's for. You know, what did I eat that made, oh dear, I've got 1 or 2 down there as well. Oops. I've clearly eaten something that's given me a rash. Yes, you have. Anyway, the stage is highly contagious as the lesions contain millions and millions and millions of bacteria. So anything you touch, fiddle in your mouth, don't wash your hands after urinating and using the toilet, those millions of bacteria are sitting there and they're saying, I want to get there. Who can I go and infect? Okay, then we get the latent stage. This is stage 3. So primary, secondary, latent. There are no apparent symptoms now. Latent means to sleep. Okay? It's sleeping, it's resting. The bacteria begins to invade the organs of the body. Advanced stage. So now it stops sleeping, it wakes up. Now we're in advanced stage. The lesions called gummas develop in the heart, the skin, the liver, the spleen. Okay, the central nervous system may become infected, and this leads to insanity, people, and finally death. Severe lesions of this organ will cause death. Okay, treatment. Scraping the canker, okay, and blood and tests, and then blood tests identify the bacteria. Blood tests show the presence of the antibody called regain, and it's produced when a person is infected. So that's how they can pick it up in your blood. An antibiotic like penicillin is prescribed during the primary stage, and it's just one big fat shot of penicillin. Once the lesions occur, permanent damage to the organs cannot be repaired. That is it. We've now covered STDs, we've covered birth, where paternal and maternal twins come from. Remember, maternal twins are the same, they're identical, monozygotic. Mono 1, zygote, 1 zygote. And dizygotic are fraternal twins. They when it's unidentical, 2 ovaries, 2 eggs, 2 fertilizations. Okay? STDs, any kind of discharge that you have, go to a clinic, go to the doctors, and sort it out immediately. Okay? With regards to all the different types of contraceptions, people, you can be asked in an exam to explain how contraceptive methods can be used to prevent abortion rates increasing, etc., etc. I mean, there are lots of things they can throw at you. They want you to talk about your ideas, your processes. Remember, your opinions count only if you can back them up and only if you explain them. You can't say, I'm anti-abortion. Well, why? No, I'm anti-abortion. You're going to get no marks for that. You must explain why and how and when and where. So don't just learn your life science. It's not a box. Learn it so that you can understand it, you can interpret it, and you can explain your point of view based on your knowledge. Have a good one. Until next time, study hard.